We've heard a lot over the last, this morning and yesterday around the system challenges of, adapting to this new reality where we have all of these new renewables coming online. And of course, technology and innovation is a really, really important part of how we get there and how we can manage the new system. So we're going to look a little bit at kind of the challenges again of what we're seeing in the system in terms of negative prices and bringing all this renewables online, and then we're going to dig into the solutions here. So maybe just, first question to each of you. Maybe you want to also briefly introduce your company as well. What do you see as the main challenges that we want to try and solve? And how is this impacting corporate procurement? And particularly also, how are ESG strategies then sort of driving change in the system? Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Elena, Pedova, managing partner at Evklips Energy, the company that I'm representing and working for. Is a company, installation company and EPC company, not only in Bulgaria, but preliminary in Europe. Also in Bulgaria, we do have our own investments in PV, wind, water, and storage. Obviously, everyone's speaking about storage. In the context of ESG that you are just mentioning, it is inevitable to discuss how we stay sustainable and still make the business case work. And as a company, we have been facing this challenge or set of challenges, how to remain at the same time, keep the prices low so they make sense for the off-takers, for the investors, and for everyone, and still keep the business running. This is a question that we have been discussing more and more in the last year, but what I can say is the most important challenges, especially here in Bulgaria, obviously the elephant in the room, in every panel we've heard it today, are the grids and infrastructure. Aging grids, not only in Bulgaria, but in Europe in general, and it's not responding to the willingness of investors and off-takers to put the money in solar, wind, or any type of renewables. So if there is one thing that I can mention, it would be those are the issues, the grid issues and the grid interconnections that we need to address first.
And I suppose that the big demand we're looking at from corporate buyers because of ESG strategies which prioritize renewables is just going to put further stress.
Well, there is further stress because you know about all the packages. You have the Fit for 55 package. You have the goals that we have set up for 2030, which is in 5 years' time. In my humble opinion, we are quite far from this, and this is why we need to look at alternative ways of technologies that are already available and how to implement them locally and on European and even global level. So even the dialogue that we are going to have today and what we are hearing so far throughout the course of the conference is showing the willingness of the investors, of the different partakers in the whole supply chain, from developers to engineers to installers. And we need to just find a way how to cooperate with authorities even, because we know in Bulgaria legal framework is another major challenge. So we need to work together, as Mariana said in the previous panel, we need to all work together in order to make it work and to implement what is already available.
Thanks so much. So Ivan, then, what's your perspective from Siemens? What are the big challenges that you're trying to solve as a company?
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be a speaker in your panel. The challenges, there are many of them. But as Elena said, one of the main challenges is initially the connection to the grid. And this very high rising demand of electricity, it's also a big challenge, and how you can tackle and cope with this demand. This is a huge challenge. But also from ESG perspective, I think with Siemens as a sustainable company, we are very, we have such a strict policy that we are following. And that's why we developed, I would like to speak particularly for a new product. This product, and this is coming from a regulation coming from the EU about the ban of fluorinated gases in electricity. Maybe all of you know. And there are participants here from the investor side, from the EPCs who are dealing with such equipment. And just to tell you that starting from 1st of January 2026, the switchgears, which are one of the core part for connection to the grid, which are installed in the substations and also on-site, on-premise, in the PV parks or in the wind parks, they should be without SF6. SF6, it means sulfur hexafluoride. And the sulfur hexafluoride, as a fluorinated gas, it has a global warming potential 25,000 more than the carbon dioxide. Can you imagine? Yeah, which is quite significant. And that's why the European Commission took this decision, up to 24 kV, which is the normal level for connection. In Bulgaria, normally we use for the PV parts 24 kV or either 36 kV. You know this. But starting from 1st of January, up to 24 kV, it will be banned. And starting from 1st of January 2030, up to 36 kV. So we Siemens as a sustainable company, and it's a big challenge for all the parties in the chain, not only for us as a manufacturer and supplier, but also for the investors, for the off-takers, and it will increase much the initial cost, you know, for the part, because the price of this new equipment is much higher than the standard one, which been used up to now. That's why we developed this BUGIS portfolio. It's a completely new model of switchgears which are using clean air, and the insulating medium inside the switchgear, it's not fluorinated gas anymore, which is, you know, bad for the environment, but it's good, it's environmental friendly, and it's clean air. And this is what we think it's good for everyone, and it will be, you know, such a success story, and we will tackle all the requirements coming from the European Union.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Now, Velizar, to sort of complement, you know, these challenges that Elena and Ivan were outlining, you know, is that something you're also seeing in the system?
Yes, most definitely. First, let me just thank the organizers and everybody for having us on the event and the panel. Just 1 minute to introduce myself and the company. So I'm the business development manager of HIC Solar. We're a large engineering, procurement and construction company working mainly in Europe. Also, of course, in the region, heavily Bulgaria and so on. We have also some of our own investments, and we're on the IPP side as well, and on the contact with off-takers and basically the whole value chain. So we have impressions from development to off-take on each step. And of course I can ramp up on the impression that Elena and Ivan had. Yes, there are some challenges in the market. Of course, grid is a very big one, as Ivan said, also new technologies, new regulations, and now we see a lot of demand from the investors to have SF6 free switch gears. So then, okay, we start to look for a solution with our engineering team, with our procurement team, but it is a challenge. But it's the norm, so nobody can escape from it, and we're just gonna need to settle down. And of course, as we said, grids are a problem everywhere. And for example, I know about projects in Romania that, for example, if you want to connect a large project, it is less expensive to connect to 400 kV because you don't have grid reinforcements on 400 than to go for, let's say, 110. And this was something unthinkable, let's say, 2 years ago, because of course the substation and all the equipment you need to go for 400 are very expensive, but still there is a business case there. And we see that, I mean, I wouldn't say that the energy operators are lagging, but I would just say that the speed of renewable deployment, investment into this business, it goes with such higher speed that it's very impressive how the industry managed to ramp up so quickly, of course with the support of many other auxiliary industries. But it's an interesting case to just even observe how this is developing.
This sounds more like a kind of policy decision rather than a kind of lack of a technological or innovative solution. Is that, what do you see? Is the technology there? We just need the right policy framework, or how do you see that?
I see everything is developing. Everybody is learning on the go with new technologies. For example, as we spoke like 2 years ago, battery storage was something like hydrogen is right now. I mean, everybody was speaking about this. No deployed project, nobody knew how it worked. And now this is the main topics on all of the conferences I've been in the last year, and everybody is expecting battery storage to make a significant impact on the market as a whole. Also, it changed the market in a way that in most of the places you have like vanilla PV projects, you almost don't see a business case anymore. Having a pure PV project, unless of course there is some state incentive or some other mechanism to support this. In what we see right now, and even with our own investment, everything is hybrid. It's the new normal right now, and it happened like this very quickly.
Elena, how do you see this?
Yeah, I completely agree with what has just been said, and it does seem like a very rapid change, but I'm sure that everyone in the audience or the people that have been working in the field of solar can confirm that there have been ongoing discussions for quite some time, because it doesn't matter when we implement it, it all starts with an idea. So we all know and knew back then that the grids are not fit for the demand. Grids are not fit for the demand. So what we needed to do is find a way to balance the grid. And yes, batteries 2 years ago it was unthinkable, and now even in Bulgaria, which I would say is slower pace than other European countries, even here we see the progress, and we can go and see the parks and the utilities that are already running. We all know about the incentives that have been given in Bulgaria and the region. So I completely agree that the technology is there. We need a legal framework to follow, or at least fit the demand and help us. And although in the beginning it might not make the perfect sense in terms of costs, once developed further, you see even with batteries, what Velizar just mentioned, 2 years ago the prices, and even 1 year ago the prices were so very different. Now it's much more accessible. We know that this is the way to go, and we just need to find a way to implement it and make it really work.
Ivan, maybe you want to detail a bit more on the kind of switch gears and how this will be a kind of game changer for bringing this to market and working with the grid.
Yeah, it's not only the switchgear. The switchgear is of course very important, but also very important and significant are the digitalization and the cybersecurity. And from the previous panels and the speakers, we heard that it's a goal that should be fulfilled for sure. And the systems, they should not be prone to cyber attacks. This is quite also a big goal that should be achieved. And you know, there is NIS and NIS2 directives, which are and they came into force. We see that in Bulgaria, it's not such a, it's a little bit delayed, which should be advanced in the future, because this is really important for the off-takers, for the grid, for everyone, for each player in this puzzle. This is one of the things. And also, I think the grids, especially, we heard yesterday from Mr. Stankov and from Mr. Dachev that they're thinking a lot, and ESO especially, they have a big expertise and they're developing their network and their grid very good. But I think that some of the utilities, the DSOs, they're lacking, and they should, also be in pace, and they should invest a little bit more about that. This is what we think, and we, of course, as Velizar and Elena said, the technology is here, but it should be used more, because the technology is here, but it costs money and investment. But at the end, it will help the off-takers and the investors to return on investment much faster. This is really important, and this is mental, and it should be understood very, very well, but by everyone. And also, I think the regulatory frame should be worked on a lot, as Elena said, because it's quite restrictive, and sometimes this administration and bureaucracy takes a lot of time. And and if you're an investor coming even from abroad, and you want to know how much you are going to invest and how soon the investment will be returned, this is really important. And that's why we Siemens, because I'm a representative of Siemens, we have all the technology. We are ready, we can provide. Even we are working as a co-owner with one of the biggest battery producer, Fluence, you know them also very well. So I think we have all the let's say, the measures and all the stuff in our hands to tackle. Yeah.
Maybe talking directly to the sort of the corporate energy buyers in the audience, because I hear a lot from buyers that they want to develop storage on site, they want access to long duration energy storage particularly. So you've outlined a lot of the challenges there, but sort of how fast can we actually get these batteries to the corporates that are asking for it?
Yeah, they are asking for it because just came back to the first question about what are the challenges and about the corporate off-taking, because it's like an off-take event mainly. So of course all the the corporates, they want renewable energy delivered to them through a base load type of structure if possible. And this is the hardest thing to deliver from a renewable energy producer to get to this renewable base load. And this is where we just try to adjust to each other on which side can make some steps back in order to have this. But yes, now we see with the development of technology that you get closer and closer to this this structure. So yes, if you have long-term storage, if you have, for example, PV, and you have also a wind park, you can deliver a quasi-base load structure to a renewable off-taker at a reasonable price, because of course, yeah, in terms of investor, on the investor side, everybody wants to maximize their profits, but at the end, we also like to have a healthy industry in the whole continent, because they are the one producing the demand, and we also want them to be competitive as well, because this is like a problem we started to see in the recent years, and some of them are getting out-competed by corporates in the other continents. We want them to be competitive, and we're trying to work together on what would be the best scenario for every side. I want to bring our expertise to them, because, okay, you are a energy-intensive industry, you want to decarbonize and so on, but you don't have the expertise. So you start to look here and there, but this is not like an easy topic. That's where the expert can come in and help. For example, we can discuss now that we have a contract with one big industrial consumer in Germany, where we have on-site investments made on their premises. So basically to make a deal a lot more simple. So basically what we have is they just provide their premises, so either it would be roof or some land next to the plant, where we do the investment, the procurement, construction, O&M, everything, and then we just sign the long-term PPA with the company. So basically they don't have to start a CapEx project, they don't need to involve consultants, they don't need to involve project managers or whatever. They just need to, of course, apply by their power purchase agreement contract, which they use it either way. So basically it's a lot simpler for them. It's also simpler for us, because we have only one side to deal with, and also creating this mini grid, you then don't have the problem with the grid connections, because you don't access the national grid, and this is the panacea of like all system operators, that the consumption is at the place of the generation. So basically this is something that we have seen is a very good working model, and we encourage more and more industrial consumers to look around for this, and we have seen good examples, and it's good basically for everything, even for the grid as a whole.
So is this kind of solution available in South? Is my microphone on? Not sure. I'll just be loud. Is this kind of, you pick this nice example of Germany. Is that something then that the Southeast Europe region can learn from? Because is that kind of, you know, basically package that you're giving to the supplier with wind plus solar, with this kind of mini grid solution, is that possible in any country in Southeast Europe right now?
Yeah, of course it's possible. I mean, with wind in Southeast Europe is a little bit more challenging, but of course solar and storage is something that's perfectly deployable. We have seen such initiatives here as well. We have participated also in such tender in Romania with a grade A company having one of their largest factories there, and just this is basically what we see. One of the drivers is having like the large corporates on like world or European level having their having their branches in Southeast Europe, they impose those practices, and then locals start to learn and see if this is working or not, and then it starts to spread out. Of course, we are a little bit lagging in those aspects, but it's a learning curve, and we don't expect anything to happen like this, but we take what we have learned from the developed markets to here in order to catch up as quickly as possible.
Yep. And maybe one point to bring in here as well is around the financing aspect and kind of developments we've been seeing at EU level. So yesterday in the opening we were discussing around the Clean Industrial Deal, which is the European Commission's new roadmap for this political term, really aimed at kind of bolstering and helping industry to transition. And when I did a bit of show of hands, not many people in the audience had actually heard about the Clean Industrial Deal, but here we are to promote more messages from Brussels, because actually as part of that announcement, they also announced this grids manufacturing package. So the European Investment Bank is going to make available 1.5 billion euros to basically ramp up grid technology manufacturing in the EU, really looking at sort of manufacturing grid components and helping to really solve these challenges that we've outlined. As, you know, maybe Ivan, as someone active in the grids manufacturing chain, is that really good news? Are you kind of aware of this kind of funding at EU level, and will this be helpful?
For sure, it's a very good news, but I'm not so into the details, yeah. So we have to dig a little bit and to understand what are the specifics, but it sounds as a really good news, yeah. Yeah, and we shall support it for sure.
I think so please.
And coming back to what just Velizar said about this decentralization, it's really important, and the balancing, it should be done on-site, not centralized, but coming from both sides, and it was discussed by the other panelists. So this is really, I think, the game changer and the key to the grid to become smarter and more efficient for connection of renewable sources.
Absolutely. So digitalization, innovation. Anything else to say on grids before we move on? We've covered grids. Lovely. So then we'll move into our next section on agrivoltaics. So maybe Elena, starting with you, about kind of what interesting projects are we seeing at the moment?
Unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of interesting projects, but not in Bulgaria. I think we should address the elephant in the room. We all know, or the people that are interested in agrivoltaics, what the ruling of the court in Bulgaria has just announced, not even a month ago, I think. And whoever is interested, you can read more about it, but we are all, the agri-PV enthusiasts, very excited about finally having legal framework allowing us to implement agrivoltaics in Bulgaria. Unfortunately, this is not going to happen as we expected, or as we expected, depending on where you look at it from. But as Velizar will share later, in Bulgaria, we do have the expertise in agrivoltaics. Speaking from experience in Evklips, we started investing into this market segment that was back then 5 years ago considered a very niche and very new segment, but is now becoming mainstream in Europe. If you take, for example, the leading European countries in agrivoltaics, France, Germany, Netherlands, this is agrivoltaics is nothing very exotic. It's something that's being implemented, and it's very easy to explain why. Obviously, land is limited. You don't have unlimited space. If you look at the Netherlands, one of the few examples where you have the full legal framework, you have the technology which is available to everyone, you can purchase it. You have the know-how, even in Bulgaria. Even on the stage now, you have two very experienced installers. We know what we need to do. We can give advices, and we have been approached, I'm sure Velizar will confirm, by investors that are willing to install agrivoltaics. So the way we started, as I said, 5 years ago, was with pilot projects. For us as a company at Evklips, it was a big debate internally whether or not we should make this big investment, because obviously, in order to make the agrivoltaics work, you have to make sure that you're protecting the land, because the primarily use of the land remains agriculture, and then you have the electricity production as a second. But this is not impossible to do everywhere. In France, for example, even in the law, they have stipulated that the land must remain for agriculture first and then electricity production. And if they can do it, then I'm sure that in Bulgaria we can also do it. Even closer to us, you have Romania, that although they are still battling some discrepancies in the law, they have already implemented the law. They know what they need to do. So I think that the most important aspect when it comes to agrivoltaics, especially in the region and in particular in Bulgaria, we should start with the debate. We should start educating the public. ABSTE, for example, they have very good incentives of opening a dialogue, because honestly, from my personal opinion, I get very frustrated when I hear about why would you use agricultural land for solar panels. Well, the question is no longer one or the other, but how you do both. And as Velizar said earlier, couple of years ago, it was impossible to think about storage. Now it's possible. Same with agrivoltaics. Yes, it's much more expensive. You need special machinery. You need tools to protect the soil. You have to think about the crop's life cycle. But this is all doable. If we're doing it everywhere else outside Bulgaria, then we can certainly do it here. And the question, I think the most important message is educate, start the conversation, explain that in 2025 we are no longer choosing one or the other, but we have the ways to incorporate both.
Because actually there's evidence that's showing it kind of has a positive impact on crop yields, and this should be very interesting for farmers, right?
Yeah, one of the first projects that we did was in Austria, and that was a pilot project for Austria, and it was a very small one, which again from EPC standpoint, it wasn't maybe at the time the smartest move, because you have to purchase the equipment, you have to work together with farmers. Farmers are very protective over their land, and you can understand why, obviously. And it was a very big investment for, at the time, it was 1.5 megawatts power plant, which was very small at the time. We had, at the same time, we were building 150 megawatts in Poland, standard PV park. So there, what we have installed is agri-PV structure. Underneath, you have apples. So 4 years later, now we still get the reports, and this project was with cooperation with the University of Graz, and it is proven, and it's visible. I did a site visit 2 years ago, that the apples are performing much better under the panels than the ones that are outside the coverage of the panels. And of course, it will not work for all species and for all crops, but it will work for some, and you can utilize it there. You have the thermal regulation, the humidity regulation, you have the protection from severe winds, for severe snowstorms, etc. So the benefits are all already there. And of course, it might not make sense everywhere, but we have to implement it where it does.
But it sounds like a solution that maybe is working better with the extreme weather we're probably going to be experiencing more and more in Europe. Do you think that's enough to convince the farmers?
Yeah, so I can share also a lot from our experience in agrivoltaics. Yes, working with farmers is interesting, but they need to learn as well, because they're involved in agriculture. Energy is something very distant to them, but we see those two sectors coupling, so there's going to be, of course, a big learning curve on both sides. And of course, as Elena said, we observe purely even on academic, on a research level, a lot of positives on combining those two technologies. As we said, extreme weather conditions is something that is really mitigated by having a PV plant over the agricultural area. Also, the one thing that is a topic right now, getting less and less access to water. You have a lot of humidity regulation. You need to water at least between 1.5 and 2 times less the crops that are underneath the panels, and this is of course very, very beneficial in rigid areas. For example, in Spain, they see very good results, because you know what's the situation there, and this might be the solution in order to have a locally produced agricultural production with the help of energy generation as well. What we can also share is we did one, maybe the biggest project. I mean, in agri-PV in Europe. We just finished a 120 megawatts project in Austria. This was also to show that this thing was scalable, because in the beginning everything was a prototype or something small, as Elena said. Now we see utility scale agrivoltaic projects. It's possible, it's working, it's there. You can go and see it. It was all over the news. And of course, there were a lot of challenges. For example, in Austria, in order to be considered an agrivoltaic project, you need to be incorporated in the local biotope. So what does that mean? You have no fence. So basically, you have free access of animals, humans, into the PV park as well. So we need to make sure that everything is protected and nobody gets electrified. Yeah.
Well, to me, it sounds like a no-brainer. So I'm hoping kind of making these positive communications about the benefits of agrivoltaics can mean that we can introduce this solution to the Southeast Europe region. Maybe just before we wrap up, because we are running out a little bit of time, let's just do a quick whiz round of floating solar. So maybe each of you could just say very quickly kind of what the potential is. You know, are we seeing this in Southeast Europe region, and any barriers that we need to address to make it happen?
Yeah, of course, we have experience in this as well. Installing floating solar, really interesting concept for us. We really enjoyed doing this. We did it also in France. It was a quarry that was rehabilitated and filled with water, and we had to install the floating power over this. We see the same benefits in terms of, again, conserving water resources. So basically, we have less evaporation on the water basins, which of course everybody were trying to preserve. We have even in Bulgaria, which is a country with a lot of water resources, we have shortages too, and they're becoming more and more each year. So this is something that could help in this conservation. Also, what we see, okay, a lot of people are saying that agricultural land is used for PV parks. Okay, then we can use water resources as well. And of course, we don't want to have like a big dam all covered in solar panels, because it's a dam and it's part of the local landscape and everything. What we see as a project is you cover no less than, let's say, between 5 to 10% of the area, and this is like the total maximum. And it should be an area with, again, discussed with the municipality, with fishermen, and you want to preserve everything that was done before to be able to be performed afterwards. And in the process of construction, you look not to disturb the local biotope and all those cases. But just to touch, it's a pity that in Bulgaria you cannot do this.
This feels like a theme to me.
Yeah,
like
Actually,
possible elsewhere, not possible in Bulgaria.
Yeah. And maybe Elena could also follow up on this, because they had a really interesting project where it's a basin with drinkable water, and they were able to conserve the qualities and everything. But she can.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, we have had a project in Belgium on a drinking water dam, and the water is still drinkable. So that was a good, very good example of how to remain sustainable while working and making it work. Apart from the benefits that Velizar mentioned, controlling the water levels, stimulating the biodiversity underneath, of course, this is subject to study, and no one will allow you anywhere, not only in Bulgaria, to do something that would damage the biodiversity. But in Bulgaria, for example, there are also a lot of dams that are not being used at all, not about drinking water. So we could use those because, as I said, land is limited. But back to the project in Belgium, of course, it's a very expensive project. Of course, it's a project that requires very strategic planning. It's a project that requires investment in special tools. You need boats, it's floating solar, so you need to make this move, but it is there. And yes, if, as Velizar said, the technology is there, it's just find a way to utilize it. So floating solar, we also see a lot of potential. We have been building floating solar in Belgium, as I mentioned, Netherlands, Germany. France is among the leaders in Europe, so there is a big future, because land already, we see with the ESG, coming back to to the initial question, how we fit the ESG requirements, well, we have to look at alternatives. We have to look at different technologies and different incentives in order to remain sustainable. And floating solar, agri-PV, those are all opportunities that are available.
Ivan, any words on kind of the technology? I mean, is it ready to roll out?
The technology is ready for sure, but as the colleague said, there are other such restrictive and resistance from NGOs, and also the regulatory framework is not ready for that, especially for the floating PVs, about the aquatic life, about the birds. There are very strong resistance coming, and as far as I know, there was a big project coming, and such an investor from Germany. It was planned on Augusta Dam for 200 megawatts park, but suddenly it stopped due to this resistance and to the not readiness of the regulator, you know, and as Velizar said, it's not possible to be done here. Also, agrivoltaics, they're a good solution because you're going to spare the land and also to use it in dual function, agriculture and producing electricity. But I think that we should work on this governmental level, and it should be firstly settled down as a law, and then we can proceed with it. But for sure, the technology is almost the same as for the standard. I mean, the connection, the protection, the SCADA, the automation is exactly the same as for the regular PVs. Yeah, and we are here. We can provide it for sure.
Super. Well, I think we'll just have to wrap up there because it's time for the lunch break. But I just wanted to share, thank you so much for sharing these really positive examples. I hope that sort of inspires everyone in the room. And I think key messages around the regulatory framework and partnerships as well, you know, working with the farmers, working with the local communities, you know, that kind of pushback from communities is such a challenge we see across, you know, renewables across Europe. So the more we can work together, the more we can get more renewables online. So thank you so much to my great speakers and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.